Alright, well, as you might guess, because we're here in the corner, today is an unboxing day, and it's one of those exciting ones. It's a day where we have splurged a little bit and gotten something a little bit out of the ordinary. So, what am I talking about? Before we get to the box, as I think anyone who follows this channel will realize, I have a tremendous fondness for cosmic horror, particularly the Cthulhu mythos, and through the course of my life as a gamer, this has been fairly consistent on the things which appeal to me about this type of horror and this type of gaming. But over the course of the decades that I've been playing, mainly Call of Cthulhu, to get this particular experience, my interests have slowly expanded. Sometimes they've contracted, but generally speaking, they've slowly expanded. And one area in which my interests have expanded into is the whole notion of the weird war. Now, while I don't go as far with it as others might, my interests being what they are, well, this is a very broad and, well, this is an area which features an awful lot of games, different systems, different approaches, different time periods, this sort of thing. So we might find that this whole idea of organizational resistance against the mythos or things like it, we might experience it expressed in a game like Delta Green. Right? Delta Green is classic in its sense of what might it be like if the events as described in Lovecraft's fiction were carried forward into the modern day. I mean, you actually have the Navy bombing an underwater deep one city in the works of Lovecraft. So, what does that actually mean? How does that actually play out? Similarly, we have Cubicle 7's offering World War Cthulhu. Not the most ominous or inspiring title, but The Darkest Hour, the subtitle, is pretty fantastic, and the work within was likewise incredible. Now, of course, both of these are drawing on licenses, or at least on a common lineage with Call of Cthulhu. And World War Cthulhu would go on to focus on London and would move itself into the Cold War. And then other people also, this is also a Cubicle 7 product, I noticed, went a little bit more into science fiction and even more into modern day, and slightly, sometimes more than slightly, into comedy with The Laundry. There's a lot of ways to approach this whole notion of cosmic Cold War horror, or hot war horror, or period struggles, or just flat out weird war. One of the more difficult ones that I've dealt with, difficult system-wise, not playing-wise, was of course Cthulhu Tech, and this has a variety of problems. But we can find, I think, a take on this type of weird war notion in a variety of different formats and systems and tastes and that sort of thing. Now, one that grabbed my attention early on, but at the exact same time that World War Cthulhu was coming out, was this one, Achtung, Cthulhu. Achtung, Cthulhu! Which came in a 2-volume set, the Keeper's Guide to the Secret War and the Investigator's Guide to the Secret War. Pretty fantastic layout, production, and these books, these ones in particular, were dual statted. They were set up for Savage Worlds and for their Chaosium license for BRP to actually use Call of Cthulhu. But Achtung Cthulhu had existed before these books, and it evolved into other systems after these books. Before these, we had Achtung Cthulhu with PDQ, the pretty darn quick system, which was really interesting, and that was released initially as a rules booklet with included scenario. Right, this was the Three Kings campaign, which allowed the game to get more traction and become this fantastic, beautiful, fairly well organized hardcover version. With the success of this, it moved into Fate Core. It moved into using the dust system and setting. They merged them together into a product that did that. Of course, it branched out into miniatures with skirmish rules, using the Dystopian Legions rule set, and it moved into more science fiction. Achtung Cthulhu has gone in a lot of places. It's never really been too far below the radar if you have been following Modiphius, I think. Well, I don't know why I was surprised with this background of Achtung Cthulhu, which I've been following along from the beginning. I don't know why I was surprised when it was announced that they were going to do a 2d20 version of the game, but surprised I was. And it's not that 2d20 doesn't handle gritty combat well. We've already seen what it can do with Mutant Chronicles and with a variety of other games that have been converted or produced for 2d20, not the least of which was the recently unboxed Fallout that we looked at a couple of weeks ago. But there we were. They issued a statement saying Achtung Cthulhu 2d20 was coming. Right? So I now don't really know how many versions of Achtung Cthulhu I have. It's Savage Worlds, 6th edition Call of Cthulhu / BRP 7th edition Call of Cthulhu, and PDQ and Fate and whatever else. But for some reason, I was really interested in what they would do with 2d20, and I'm really glad that I pre-ordered it. As soon as I got the initial PDF of the player's guide and started reading it, it grabbed me in a way that Achtung Cthulhu never had done before. It was always interesting. It was always there, something to reference, something to talk about, something to play from time to time. But this time, it really grabbed me hard. And one of the things that is quite different about this take on the Achtung Cthulhu property is that it has all been extensively rewritten. You're not going to find the same text from here just cut and pasted in with new system information and with conversions of creatures. You're going to find the same setting, the same famous characters, the same situations, the same references to events from scenarios, but all rewritten and with the perspective that all of this time and all of these products have brought to the property. Plus, we have a pretty stellar lineup of people involved in producing it. So, today, DHL delivered this nice meaty box, and we're going to open it and see what's inside. And this particular pre-order is the Exarch Collector's Edition. So it's not the complete edition, so I don't have the standard and the collector's version, the limited edition version in here. It's just the limited edition version, the GM toolkit, and 2 sets of dice, plus I added on 2 sets of dice. So we got a lot of dice in this box. So we'll take a look at all of those things. So, been waiting quite a while for this. Not because of any particular delay or any production problem or anything along those lines, just anticipation. As soon as I received the PDF, like I said, as soon as I started to read through them, I really wanted to see this. I wanted to get it on the table. And it's one of those games that I hope, I can get to play with people around a table if that ever, becomes possible again. But we'll see. All right, so first we have bubble wrap, or more specifically, air pillows. And now that we've gotten that out of the way, I really like, as usual, how everything has been packed. But I think we'll move to a different view so that you can see inside the box and see what I see. Okay, so this is exactly how the box looks when you open it and remove the air pillows. Now, as I mentioned, this was a pre-order, a bundle, the Exarch Collector's Edition. Now, it came with two sets of dice, one of each of the types that are available, and I added on two more. So if you ordered that bundle and didn't add on extra dice, you won't get this many dice. The two dice sets which are available are the Black Sun dice and the Blower Crystal dice. So let's take a look at these for the first time. Well, that's really quite nice. They are an icy blue, kind of a frosted look. They do allow some light to pass through. There's some translucence there, but it's not transparent. You're not seeing the numbers or the symbols from the other side of the dice. As usual, it's 2d20 and 4d6. Sometimes it's 2d20 plus 1 hit location die and 4d6. And so it definitely feels like more than one dice set is needed to maintain the theme. Although, of course, this really isn't essential because you can be using any d20s, you can be using any d6s. The special symbols on the dice for the d6s are Child's Play to Remember. It's divided into threes, or into three parts. You've got 1 and 2, you've got 3 and 4, and you have 5 and 6. 1 and 2 is 1 point. Oh, you can't see that. 1 and 2 is 1 point. That's 1. That's 2. 3 and 4 are blank. They've got nothing on them. And 5 and 6 are 1 with an effect. Pretty simple. So the D20 is just a normal D20, except you're going to be reading it with low being better. Anyway, it's just thematically nice to have the dice. They can reinforce the mood at the table. So we find this with Conan a little bit. We find it with Star Trek a lot because the colors speak to the IP, and the special symbols on the dice do as well. Here, it's mainly the icons which are doing the work, but also just the remembrance, the aid to remembering that this is an occult and secret war. And so glancing down every once in a while and seeing an occult symbol sprayed before you among your dice can help to reinforce that theme. But in terms of actual play, these dice are not necessary. All right, let's see what else we have in the box. We have bubble wrap in the box, and of course it's another sealed envelope of bubble wrap. And we can see that this is the Game Master's toolkit, which means it's a screen and a booklet. Now, of course, not to drag this out or anything, the box is in perfect condition because it was hand-delivered by DHL and didn't have to go through the vagaries of the postal service. But underneath, so all the books are together. Underneath it is another set of air pillows. All right, so we've taken everything out of the bubble wrap. And of course, it's still wrapped in its own shrink wrap, which means there's lots and lots of glare. So rather than subject you to that, but to give you a nice hint about what's to come after we take a look at the Game Master's toolkit, we see this mysterious black book with its gold gilded pages. All right, so taking the shrink wrap off, which, you know, when it comes to these screens, which I don't use a lot, I often have hesitation, like, should I just leave the shrink wrap on until I actually use this screen? Or should I instead, you know, free it so that I'm more likely to use it? It's one of those questions. All right, so it's pretty durable shrink wrap. Gave me a little bit of trouble there. It has one of these flimsy ads on the back to tell you what's inside, because of course none of that is represented anywhere else. And so just to give you an idea, the GM screen is listed as being 4-panel. It's also described as being mighty. In addition to being mighty, it features dramatic artwork depicting the heroes and villains of the Secret War. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And this booklet, which uses all of its space for its contents, including the inside cover with the credits, right, is, well, to my fingers, it's a little flimsy. It feels... I'm going to interrupt myself right here. My first impression that the paper was flimsy, that the booklet was of a lower production quality than previous booklets, it bothered me. And so after I finished recording the unboxing, I went and I checked. I checked the Fallout Game Master's Toolkit. I checked the Dune Game Master's Toolkit. I compared them directly to the Achtung, Cthulhu Game Master's Toolkit. And what I discovered was that there really isn't a significant difference. There are page count differences, which can make books seem stiffer, but they're put together in the same fashion. They're all, you know, 2 staples. They're within 10 pages or so of each other, and they have a similar gloss and a similar feel and a similar appearance, as you can see on the screen as I compare. So it seemed in the moment like they were really different, but they weren't. Well, to my fingers, it's a little flimsy. It feels like, it feels like what you would get as promotional material rather than supplemental material, or things which really should have been in the book anyway. A lot of screen products which come with a booklet, that's really the situation that we're dealing with, is that this is material that we couldn't fit it in the book. There's so much material, we couldn't fit it in the book. It's like, well, I always have to wonder about that. There's nice and very dramatic art in here, and the type of information that's in the kit is finding a good title for your adventures and campaigns, different settings, backgrounds, battles and operations, and developing your plot, the opening scene. So it's very GM focused tips. So you can see a strong rationale for why it might be in its own book. Direct the arcane forces of the Secret War. This is listed as issue number 3. Now, the player's guide for Achtung, Cthulhu is issue number 1, and the GM's guide is issue number 2, and this kit is issue number 3. So don't worry about missing stuff. So the Game Master's Toolkit, pretty dramatic. Craft memorable missions, create fiendish adversaries, deliver awesome campaigns, and rule worlds of pulp adventure is the purpose of this particular kit. And with that being the case, if this is a game that you're going to be coming to sporadically, off and on, then I would wish that this booklet were on better paper. But it is the sort of thing that you should be able to read it once and absorb, and then it becomes part of your Game Master toolkit. So it doesn't need to be too tough, but anyway, it's kind of a shame, especially considering how excellent the screen itself is. So let's take a look at that. So here's one of those panels of art. You see that the screen has a matte finish. And it is indeed dynamic. The opposite panel, same sort of stuff. One large battle scene. Right. Now, personally, if I have my choice, I prefer that the game not brand the screen. You know, have the artwork for sure, but then again, if you're playing publicly or you're playing in some kind of convention space or some kind of gaming store, it is nice to be able to answer the question of what game are you guys playing without actually having to interrupt the flow of the game to answer the question. Now let's take a look at the other side of the screen. So there's a variety of things here right at your eye line, which if you are new to the system or new to the way that this game approaches certain things, I think are fairly well placed. But, you know, time and experience will tell. Screens do tend to be a very personal thing. This is a very dramatic looking one. It has enough flavor and has enough treatments to make it look like documentation without getting in the way of its legibility. Now, some of this print is a little small, but the useful information, the quick glance information, is just the right size, I think. Okay, now it's time for the main event, the Exarch's edition of the core rules. And this means that they're all in one. They're all together under one set of faux leather covers with gold accents and gilded pages, the whole 9 yards. If you order the standard rules, then you'll get this as 2 hardcover books. So let's get rid of the shrink wrap and then take a look inside. All right. The book has 2 bookmarks, one yellow or gold and one black. And down the spine, it has, every effort has been made to make it look like an actual, occult tome from the period. Right. So that's kind of nice. Now inside, this is the same interior as the standard editions, just presented as one core volume. And like previous editions of Achtung, Cthulhu, it's set up to resemble documents and files and workups of planning situations for military operations, which is kind of cool. But now that the shrink wrap is off, let's take a look. Right. We can see why it's called the Black Sun, right? All right, pretty snazzy. Now, down the spine. Now, down the spine, you can see the Exarch's edition and our Achtung Cthulhu, our Cthulhu symbol. Right? But let's take a look inside. Let's head into the interior. So it's nice and silent as we open it up. And inside, our end papers are extremely dramatic, wouldn't you say? Nice, thick paper. Of course, the usual dramatic art. Lots of inspiring art. Not just art for art's sake, but art
which clearly connects you to the period and, of course, to the genre. So there's art that we've seen as covers in other things. Right? What is Achtung, Cthulhu is our opening section. What's 2d20? The pages are a matte finish, which is not, well, there's some gloss, but not high gloss like we have seen in some of their other books. So our opening section just gives everybody an idea of very quickly exactly how this game approaches the notion of a secret war or a weird war. And we have playing the game, and this is a good example of what pages look like as 2d20 is explained. Right? And so it'll be images of the dice and how to roll, and each section is clearly marked with what chapter it is and what part it is. There are lots of helpful boxes for specific questions that you might have and making everything specific. So it has a pretty strong visual language in its layout and design. And with the effort made to look like file folders and plans, I find it makes it a lot easier for me to accept art of various types being placed into the layout. It's there, and it looks like photographs, it looks like artist sketches and things like that have been inserted into a set of documents collected by various people, and it just adds to the sense of realism for me. Right? It has an immersive quality to it. There is a lot of text, there is a lot of art. It's a reasonable size font, and there are things like notations throughout, right, in different hands and different types from different periods and different readers. Now you're hearing the pages are somewhat stuck together. Right? It's been highly compressed, I think. So let's find our two bookmarks, our two ribbons. Here they are. Quite nice. Now, of course, like all the other 2d20, I guess we could call them adaptations, this particular version of 2d20 calls upon the same core that the other games use, with specific inclusions or revisions or deletions to make the game speak to this particular genre. One of the reasons that the pages are somewhat sticking together is, of course, that they have received this gold gilding around the edges. We're near the center of the book, where we have this pretty intense, magical and combative scene on a 2-page spread. But you can hear the pages separating, as it's the first time, of course, that the book has been opened. So this is what to expect from this particular edition, of course, and this interior is the same as what you'd expect in the standard editions. Pages aren't as thin as they seem in the Game Master's Toolkit, although that could just simply be subjective assessment, which proves to be erroneous. But the pages are somewhat thin. They are of the type that could be accidentally folded at the corners, but it doesn't, this does not feel in any way like a cheap book. It definitely has that strong, modern, full-color book smell, though, which I'm learning to enjoy. All right. So I hope you've enjoyed this trip through unboxing this new version of Achtung, Cthulhu. And there may be, if my luck holds, some actual play videos of the game in action in the future. We'll see. Anyway, until the next time, take care.